He's one of the wittiest, most colorful lawmakers in the Mississippi legislature. Steve Holland of Plantersville has served Lee and Monroe counties for nearly 35 years. In 2017, Steve surprised everyone by announcing his retirement due to health reasons. But now, well, that's all changed. Steve, good to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Marshall.
Yeah, number one, I'm admiring the beard growth here a little bit. I hope High Definition picks it up.
Well, you're very kind.
You going ZZ Top or what?
Somebody said GQ yesterday, and I said, nah, 62-year-olds don't do GQ, maybe Reed, but not Ian. I did No Shave November and raised a good bit of money for one of my favorite charities, St. Jude, and of course, you know I'm in the funeral business, so hair on the face is questionable. But we've crossed the Rubicon on that, and I like it, and everybody else seems to like it. So, you know, just a new Steve Holland.
So tattoos are next and maybe a piercing?
Yeah, and I can't figure out where I want to put the tattoo, but I'm definitely fixing to get one, I think.
Well, we'll get you on the next show to show that one off.
Okay.
Look, I got to say, you know, the last time we talked, it was not looking good for you. You'd been diagnosed with a very serious form of dementia. You know, you were having trouble with memory, everything else. And then, lo and behold, you get on the floor of the house and announce that you've been cured. You got to tell us what's going on.
Well, I can tell only from my side. You'd have to get my doctors in to tell from their side. I'm still a great advocate of UMC and the Mind Center there, and a great supporter of that, where I was getting my treatment. I think, in my humble opinion, what happened was, on January 17th of 2014, my gallbladder ruptured on the floor of the house, and I went septic. I was already septic, but it manifested itself. And by the time I got in a highway patrol car to UMC, I was already septic. And
it darn near killed you.
It almost killed me. I mean, I was touch and go for a solid month in a coma, on a ventilator, and barely existing, doing surgeries about every third day, it seems like, because everything was all discombobulated internally. And they brought me through, thank God. They and the Sovereign Grand Architect of the Universe brought me through that. But interestingly enough, I think the severity of that was overlooked.
Yeah.
And probably the part, in my opinion, that was overlooked was the rehab part of that. Now, a guy named Dr. John Porter, who was Mississippi's trauma doctor, wound up being my own personal physician through all of that. He's now back at Johns Hopkins, where he came to us from about 12, 13 years ago. But he, on Labor Day of this year, about Labor Day, Gloria and I were having dinner, and I shared with her that the fog had been lifted. I got up this morning, Gloria, and I just felt so good. I mean, it was like, I guess I've never had cataracts, but I've heard, oh, you know, I can see now. I got the cataracts off. That's the way my brain was and my memory. I got up that morning and I felt so good. I felt youthful, and my mind was just spinning 90 to nothing. I'm going, you know, I've been in a fog.
Yeah.
And it's no longer there. And quite frankly, it has not been there since Labor Day. I immediately called UMC and tell them, I feel good. I'm thinking, I'm remembering everything all of a sudden. It's just like a miracle. And of course, they didn't buy into it. And they wanted me to come back for more testing, and which I did, and didn't do so well on the cognitive testing. But the bottom line is I feel good. So they want me to continue to be a patient. I probably will. I don't know. Jury's out. I got an appointment in about 2 weeks, and I'm not sure I'm going to keep it. But anyway, I feel good, and that's the main thing. And all I can say is that night, Gloria and I were talking, and she said Dr. Porter had called her when I came out of the coma to tell her, Ms. Holland, I think Steve's going to live, and it's the first time I've been able to say that in 30 days.
Wow.
But let me just remind you, he's got a long journey ahead of him. We don't know what the ultimate effects of this are going to be, physically or mentally, but it's going to have an impact. And you're probably not going to see the Steve Holland you knew before this happened for a minimum of 3.5 years. Well, my wife, who is just puts everything on her cell phone and still had the deal, and we looked it up, and it was 3.5 years to that day.
Because you were diagnosed with the kind of dementia that is very aggressive, very fast. It's early onset.
Yes.
I mean, you really, honestly, you and I shouldn't be having this conversation right now.
According to the initial diagnosis in March of 17, no, I should be probably about now mindless, completely mindless, and gone in about another 2 years. I mean, it's a fast acting. It deteriorates the brain and in turn deteriorates the various systems individually, and you just eventually go away. You have no way to sustain yourself.
Yeah, what they diagnosed you was a frontal
temporal.
Yeah,
frontotemporal.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
very aggressive.
Yeah, dementia. So
well, good.
I'm blessed. I feel good. I feel great, and I don't know what to say about it. I mean, I've had people who've wanted me to jump on UMC, and I'm not going to do that because things happen.
Right.
Doctors, they say they practice. Well, they are practicing. And they practiced on me, but I was made back whole by some miracle. I'll accept that. Prayers, I'll accept that, believe in that. I'm well, and that's the main thing. And I don't know how long I'm going to stay well, but right now, I could climb Mount Everest.
Well, okay. So you said you were going to retire and you were going to get out of the business. Are you still saying that?
I'm praying about that.
Okay.
I mean, 35 years. This is my 35th session of the legislature. That's a long life for a politician. That is an extraordinarily long. A week is a long life for a politician, but 35 years.
Yeah.
I
mean, you were a Republican. That's how long ago it was.
Yeah. Actually, I lost that election. Remember, I got off my medicine, Marshall, for a little period of time, and Ronald Reagan got to me in 1980 when I made my first race for the legislature, and I thought it was sort of kinky and cool to run as a Republican, and I did, and couldn't even get my own grandmother to vote for me as a Republican because she'd never voted for a Republican in her life. And I lost that by 101 votes. But I came back 3 years later as a Democrat and won, and I've been here ever since. So there you have it. Haley likes to tease me about that and a lot of other people, but I did have a pretty strong association there for about 18 months with the GOP, the Grand Old Party.
Of course, you did get elected. You got in there. And, of course, for many years, you were right in the thick of things. And now, of course, Republicans are in charge. You're not in charge. What's it like being, a backbencher?
Well, it's sort of like being out in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean without a paddle with a hole in the boat. It's not a real good feeling. It's not a control issue with me, but it is an issue of somewhat philosophy. I make no bones about it. I'm very progressive in my thinking, and everybody knows that. There's a segment that would say I'm probably the most liberal white member of the legislature, period.
Hob Bryant might disagree with you.
Hob Bryant could disagree.
Actually, he would disagree that I just said that.
Yeah, he and I are pretty close, and we share districts. About 80% of our districts are the same, which is pretty interesting. Hob and I have dinner pretty often, and we're very fond of each other, and we often say that our people are very enlightened and lucky to have us to represent them. Now, right now in this session, I've been brought back into the fold a little bit on Medicaid, and it feels good.
Yeah.
It feels good because I've got institutional knowledge, and we're in a critical time.
Right.
And the leadership has been turned over a little bit to somebody who's a little more middle of the road, and so we're working this out. And that's the way government ought to work.
Right.
Period. I really believe that.
You got a day job, too.
I do have a day job. I have a big day job.
You really, really is big. And I did have, I'd like to say the honor of getting to talk to you and getting to see the home. The home. Yeah. Which used to be a former
club. The largest nightclub beer joint under one roof in the state of Mississippi is my present funeral facility.
That's like such a circle of life kind of thing.
It is the circle of life. We're dealing with the circle of life, the end stage. It's a pretty interesting deal about how all of that. It's a pretty interesting deal about how I got in the business to start with and how I'm still in it 45 years.
Yeah, how did you get in? Because, I mean, that's not, when you're a kid, you don't normally say, you know what, I think I'm going to bury people when I grow up.
Yeah, that's right. Well, interestingly enough, my dad was a fairly major investor in an upstart funeral home in Tupelo that started in the mid-'60s. I graduated from high school in 73. I was going to be a doctor ever so big. That's what I wanted to be. And Dad, in his farming brilliance, said, well, I'm going to get you a job at the funeral home because you can get a lot of gross anatomy there, and that'll be good for your medical training. probably wasn't a bad idea. I fought it. I wasn't sure about it, but I went there. My dad had given my two older brothers a new pickup when they graduated from high school, and he tried to give me one. And I said, I've got my old souped-up Mustang. I don't want a new truck. I'm going to college, and I've got just what I need. You just support me in college financially, and we'll be fine. And he couldn't wrap his arms around that and couldn't understand why I didn't want a new vehicle. So just before college, we were working one day at our farm, and we came in for lunch, and he said, here, and gave me an envelope, and he had transferred the stock in the funeral home to me.
Wow.
And so I took that, and that was the genesis of my funeral career, and that was 45 years ago. So
that's how the empire began.
that's how well, I don't know about an empire, but
No.
we do good work.
Well, who runs it when you're down here?
Well, my 85-year-old mother, what a
Yeah.
trooper. And I've got a great staff. I really do, who I empower and who have the same passion and compassion that I have. Interestingly enough, the biggest breaking news in the Holland family is my baby, our baby, Mac, who has been a coach and big athletic involver and educator in the Pontotoc County school system, announced to us 2 weeks ago he is getting into the funeral business.
Really?
And I could not be more joyful and happy in my life. I mean,
So he could come work with you?
oh yeah, I'm going to train him. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm going to train him, and then I'm sure someday he'll take over the funeral home. That's the hope that every dad has, because I've worked hard to bring that place to where it is, and it's a sweet service to our people in that greater Lee County, Tupelo, Okolona, Chickasaw County, Monroe County area, Etowamba, Pontotoc, and so that's brought me a lot of joy and a lot of comfort and a lot of assurance that the business will go on. I mean, I didn't have of my 4 children, none of them were interested up until 2 weeks ago, and he's 32 now, almost 33. And I think he just waited out. He's a really smart, intelligent. He gets his mama's intelligence, and he's got my personality, and I think that's a winning combo.
That is a good combination.
And I think he's going to be highly successful. So we're thrilled.
Well, I mean, your personality sometimes on the floor of the house is you're rowdy, you're loud, you're good at disagreeing and everything else. But then when you're up at the funeral home, I mean, you're dealing with people at the most tough moment of their life.
Well, let me tell you what happened to me, and I was telling this story just yesterday. I got a letter from a lady. It was a very tragic death, and all of them are fairly tragic. Let's call it what it is, end of life. I mean, we now don't say the funeral will be, we say the celebration of life, and I like that. I like that change after you transition from this life to the next. It should be a celebration in most cases. But this lady called on me to help her deal with a pretty tragic death. And the first thing that we did, we spent, before we ever got into what we needed to do, we spent probably 15 minutes talking about the good parts, none of the bad parts. And we brought up a good bit of laughter. And when she finally laughed for the first time in the tears, I won't say it was downhill from there, but it set the kind of stage that I like to set, which is reality, number one. I can't do anything about the fact that somebody crossed over.
Yeah.
It's my job to make the transition smooth.
Right.
And make the ceremony smooth and worthwhile and memorable. And that's what I do every day. Somebody asked me on an airplane one time what I did, and I said, I'm a bridge builder. And they said, oh, that's interesting. What kind of bridge? I said, bridges from death back to life. Wow. And that's the way I like to look at it. That's what I do for a living, which it's got morbid parts to it, and it's very emotional and very traumatic. I have a situation right now at home to where I've got a granddaughter that died, and 2 hours later, the grandfather died.
Oh.
One in Nashville and one in Tupelo. And we're going to have both of the funerals. And so that's an incredible dynamic for a daughter to be burying her father and her daughter. A mother to be burying her father and her daughter. That's the kind of things we deal with. But anyway, this lady, we wound up just having a marvelous celebration. And about a month later, she wrote me a letter, and she said, I've been trying to figure you out for a long time. I've always found you to be very interesting. But here's how I size up what you did for my family and myself. You put the FUN, the fun, in funeral. And that was almost the highest compliment I've ever received.
Yeah.
And it was nothing fun about that funeral, but we managed in the tears to laugh a lot. And she said, I'm at a place where I don't think I would have been had I not called on you to handle this. Otherwise, it would have been a mechanical kind of situation to where we just buried the dead. But instead, we celebrated a life, although it was cut short. We celebrated a life. And so that's the kind of affirmation I get.
Yeah.
And I think it's a ministry. And I love what I do there. So there's a lot more left of me. And now that my son's coming into it, I can really put the fun in funeral. I'll let him do the work. And I'll sit back and watch him and, coach him a little bit. I'm going to be the coach now.
That kind of sounds like me with my kids.
Yeah.
Go cut the grass, that sort of thing.
Absolutely,
Well, I mean, and you've had some, obviously with your own health challenges. Gloria's been ill, and she retired recently from being mayor.
She did, yes.
And that's been tough. So, I mean, y'all have had to take that same philosophy into your personal life, haven't you?
We have. And, we're resilient people. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. We're very blessed. We're a very outgoing family. And we're a very involved family in our community, not only in our professional pursuits, but we give a lot back. And I think people that give know the real, true value of genuine love and general affirmation of life. And so we've been blessed to have that kind of attitude and to live in a community that accepts that and that actually sponges off of it. And so Gloria went through a brain tumor herself this year and very major radical surgery. And retired from the mayorship of Plantersville, and then ultimately retired after almost 40 years as a mental health therapist, licensed professional counselor, marriage and family therapist. And so she's keeping grandkids. She's leveling out from her surgery, and we're moving on with our lives in our 60s. And it's pretty joyful, just to tell you the truth.
When you thought you were and you and I have talked. I mean, there were you'd have 3 good days and 1 bad day. I mean, there'd be days when you would get turned around when you were driving kind of moments.
Oh, I had times when I would get under the wheel and I wouldn't even know where I was going. I mean, I could drive fine, but I'm going, now where am I going?
Yeah.
And I just drive on by where I was going. And I even have gone to Pontotoc or Fulton when I left my business instead of to Plantersville because I got out on the road and the instinct was to drive. I guess maybe my brain was saying, ultimately, you'll figure out where you are, but I couldn't in the short term.
Right.
And it was sporadic. It wasn't consistent. I had days I could remember everything, and I had days I couldn't even remember. My mom at the funeral home, just tell you the truth, for about 2 years, went around with a little note in her hand with a deceased name on it. That's how bad it got for a while. And I fought it. Thank God I fought it. I just when I got that terrible diagnosis in March of 17.
Yeah, because you almost quit, just walked away.
I almost walked away at that point.
Yeah.
But I took enough time, and I was blessed with enough mental prowess to sit there and think, and realize that I'd had a lot of odds in my life already.
Yeah.
That had been overcome, even health and otherwise.
I'm about to say the surgeries and, that you had.
And so
you try to do a fitness program with Paul Lacoste, who's been on the show.
Yes, but anyway, still got my knee brace on here. Thanks, Paul. You great American. I love you. But anyway, I just decided it was pretty interesting how that unfolded in the days after I got that diagnosis. I went home and gathered my family.
Yeah.
And I told them, I said, this is what UMC says.
Yeah.
And I don't know really what to do, but I can tell you this. I'm going to make preparations because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
But beyond that, I'm going to fight like hell.
And you did. I mean,
I'm going to resist.
You played piano every day?
Oh, I play in 2 churches mostly every Sunday.
Yeah.
I play for 80% of the funerals at my place. Wherever there's a piano, I'll sit down and play, and I love that. And interestingly enough, my doctors prescribed that as one of the best of all therapies for fighting dementia because it's the perfect concentration. It's a thing of satisfaction. In my case, a thing of great joy. It's my golf, And so I did that. I trumped that up extraordinarily, and it helped. But now I got better in September, so here we are. I just am declaring myself well, and I hope I'm not being premature. I went to Chorus Line last night, and they talk a lot about living in the moment in Chorus Line. It's what it's about. And I think I have a renewed perspective of living in the moment. Looking death in the face for 45 years has taught me extraordinarily well how to live in the moment. People say I'm pretty radical, and I think my foundation is actually pretty solid. But I attack life every day with the gusto of a hound dog. Because, hell, you may not have tomorrow.
Right.
This is the day. And rejoice and be glad in it. And that's what I try to do every day. I'm not right. I'm not the most brilliant. I'm not a lot of things. But I'm pretty happy. And I'm pretty content. And I'm pretty fulfilled that I am doing the Lord's work in politics and at the funeral home. So how blessed can a soul be?
Looking back at your career, I mean, I think about all the things I've drawn cartoons about you about.
Oh, my God. You have, how many times have you drawn me? Thousands?
Yeah, must have been a million at least.
Yeah,
So,
seems like it.
but I mean, looking back over your career, and of course, I know there are things you're very proud of. What were some of the craziest moments in the legislature?
Oh, crazy moments?
Yeah.
Well, when you served 35 years, and a lot of the legislature is crazy. Every day, by nature, I think it's somewhat crazy. I've always taken that responsibility very seriously, just as I have my funeral business. But you can take things seriously and still laugh, you know?
Yeah, right.
I mean, I think that is the religion of it, if you will. I mean, laughter is the better part of religion. So a particular moment's not jumping out right now, but I remember when we were doing the pilot project on managed care, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I got overwhelming support on a Friday, and it was held on a motion to reconsider, and we came back, and I thought I was going to walk to the podium and table the motion to reconsider, and somebody moved to reconsider, and we reconsidered, and the entire Black Caucus turned on me.
Oh, wow.
That was crazy in the sense that I didn't understand what was going on, and I still don't to this good day understand what was going on. We ultimately worked it out and had the pilot project. Now we've got full-scale managed care in the state, but you have crazy in that sense. You don't understand the nomenclature, the whole perspective of what changes folks.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in today's legislature versus when I came here 35 years ago, money is changing it.
Yeah.
And that's sad. That's sad.
You, like I said, you're still debating whether or not to keep going or not.
Well, that's going to be a big decision. Gloria's retired, and I can see how much she's enjoying that.
Yeah.
Gloria, being a mental health therapist all of her life, has said to me several times, and I've never understood it, and I've disagreed with her. She even said to me one time she'd rather be married to an alcoholic than a workaholic. And I said, surely you jest. Surely you jest. I am a workaholic. I am just, I just literally surround everything that I do with every ounce of energy and passion and personality that I possibly can. I have enjoyed 35 years in the legislature. It's not always been rosy. I'll tell you what I'm not enjoying. You know, I've had 6 surgeries on the left knee already and maybe looking at another. Now the hips are feeling pretty wild. 185 miles from my doorstep to the steps of the Capitol is a hell of a long trip at age 62. I'm getting tired of that part. Can I endure 4 more years of it or 5 more? I've got till March the 1st of 2019 to decide, and I'm going to take that decision just like I've taken all the decisions. I'm going to think about it a whole lot, and then probably I'll have me 2 or 3 stout drinks on February the 28th. If I hadn't decided by then, I'll go qualify or won't.
I found out that Paul Thorne was one of your neighbors.
Paul Thorne is one of my neighbors, and I love me some Paul Thorne. I've restored a 100-year-old, we call it the Sanctuary at the Sadie J. Our farm is named after my mom, Sadie, and my dad was Jay. And I called it the Sanctuary at the Sadie J., the Paul Thorne Theater. And Paul comes out fairly often and meditates and plays. And he does a concert benefiting the Regional Rehabilitation Center in Tupelo, which I'm chairman of the board of, president, every year, that raises a gob of money and provides one of the most provocative, interesting evenings of entertainment you've ever seen. Two Saturdays before Christmas every year. And so, yeah, Paul's my neighbor, and I like Paul. Paul's doing good work.
Well, we're about to wrap up. Any closing thoughts?
Well, I'm grateful. I'm at a point in my life where I guess the greatest blessing that I realize and the greatest virtue is gratitude.
Yeah.
Some people think I'm pious, some people think I'm vain, and I can appreciate that. I come across pretty much in charge and pretty much in control, I think. But at the end of the day now, I go, thank you, Lord, for letting me live through this day. Thank you for using me as a vessel to help some poor soul out there, especially the least, last, and most vulnerable of our people that don't have a lobby group, that don't have a PAC. And that's who I've helped, and I can't get enough of that. It's like a hog at the slopping trough. I just eat it up. I'd love for somebody to call me, so that's where I am. Now the phone's ringing.
Exactly. Steve, thank you. It's always good to visit with you.
Bless you.
Okay.